Konnichiwa! Paprium is one of the best, most ambitious Mega Drive games ever seen. Or at least it would be if there was any chance of it coming out. In today's show, we're going to be taking a very brief look at what happened to Paprium and then ask what could they do and what can they still do to launch the game. If you're new to the channel and you love your retro gaming, then why not consider subscribing by clicking on a little button down below, and while you're there, you can play the little thumbs up mini game. My name's Mike, and this is the Retro Gamer Boy Show. Now, I first heard of Paprium back in maybe 2014. It's a game by Watermelon Studios, who created Pier Solar. Now, it wasn't until June this year when I actually heard the name Paprium again. Well, I didn't actually hear it, I saw it. It was an advert for the game on some kind of retro store website. I was like, oh my god, it must be out. I'd completely forgotten about this game. So I clicked on the link, went to the website and saw that you could no longer purchase the game. And so I decided to dig around to see if there was a copy available. Turns out the game has had a torrid and sordid history. Due to release in 2016, I think, and then again in 2017, and then again in 2018, and then again in 2019. And in fact, since me first hearing about in 2014, the game hasn't seen the light of day at all, except for some weird demo that appeared out in public during a supposed launch party where the game didn't work at all. In fact, just type the name into Google and you'll find a number of documentaries, investigative reporting on a game that seems to have turned into an absolute myth, where its initial financial backers, gamers like you and me, have lost hundreds of dollars investing in the game that's never turned up. And why is this? Well, there are a number of documentaries and great articles that go into great depth into what happened at Watermelon and with Paprium. Everything from money laundering to a scam, to drama that happened within the dev team which ultimately led to the game being canned. There's a ton of speculation around what exactly happened to Paprium. For me, when I look at this, I think it's pretty simple. Now, I've been in the games industry as a developer for 20 years, starting out first at Sony PlayStation, moving on to run an Xbox studio, setting up my own games company, then going back to the big studios and working for a partner studio with Ubisoft, and now again working for another AAA company. And one thing that is a common denominator with all games development is that games teams have a huge amount of creative ambition. And if you don't curb that ambition, scope it, trim it down, then you're going to end up running out of money. And I think this is exactly what's happened with Paprium. The game is ambitious beyond imagination. Specialist tech living inside the cartridge. A full-blown 80 meg cartridge. Fantastic graphics, huge sprites, and a color palette that I have never seen on a Mega Drive, and to be honest, I don't think is even possible. Paprium. Ambition is often the first killer of any video game. Now, as game developers, we want to make the best game ever. And especially if you're developing your own game, then this is something that's part of you. Something that you're going to throw everything you have into. And often, if you don't have the skills to manage your budget, manage your development team, then your game is going to spiral out of control. And it's difficult developing a game, especially a new game. With a new game, you don't know what it is you're making. You have an idea, inspiration, something that's going to drive you forward. But unless you keep on evaluating that, making sure that you're within the scope of what you can afford and achieve, then very soon you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble. And I think this is exactly what's happened to Watermelon, especially when you look at what they wanted to achieve with Paprium. Now, from what we can see, Watermelon chose a business model which involved early investment, and this investment was generated by gamers. Essentially, they built up a vision for the game, then sold that with the promise that in the future you'd be able to get your hands on this game. Now, back when Paprium chose this business model, there weren't many developers making games for the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. It was quite a unique pursuit, and one that had a lot of risk attached to it. But as I said earlier, not the most riskiest thing about Paprium. Again, its scope, its ambition was the thing that strangled this game. You would have to be crazy to take on any kind of risk like that. Imagine having to build out brand new hardware that wasn't available on the original Genesis cartridge. That already is a huge risk for your company. You have to invest money into it, prototyping, building out models that you can develop on. Then you're building a brand new game, a new idea. You don't know what the end of the game's going to be like. You don't know what the development challenges are going to be. Those two things together are a recipe for disaster. Now, if you have enough money and investment, that's something you could definitely tackle. But Watermelon went for an investment model that was sponsored by gamers like us. And so the amount of money they could generate was always going to be limited. And here's where we get into what Watermelon could have done to ship this game. And if they're still around, and barring that this isn't a scam or some kind of money laundering issue, could still do to get Paprium out on the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. Now, whilst the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis community is a hugely passionate one and embraces all kinds of new innovations and games that come out onto the platform, it is a small one. Essentially, what they were dealing with was a small funnel. So if you think the width, the top of my fingers here, is how many people are on the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis platform at the moment collecting and actively interested in the console. Then you go down the funnel. People that want your game, people that know about your game, people that you can afford your game. You can see the funnel gets smaller and smaller until at the palm of my hands here, we end up with the audience that will purchase the game from you, or in this case, invest in the game that Watermelon were making. Better business sense here would have been to choose a different business model. A business model that widened that funnel, that took these two fingertips here and put them out here. The more platforms and people you can attract, the wider the bottom of your funnel. And there's still a chance that you could bring this game to market. And I still think there's a space for Paprium in the modern retro gaming scene. We've seen games like Tanglewood and Xenocrisis come to market using this very business model. Tanglewood a little less, but definitely Xenocrisis. And these games, back in the day, if they had been launched when the consoles would have came out, would have been system sellers. And Paprium is of that quality, at least from the screenshots and vision and videos that we've seen. And so, if they were to pivot now, move to something like Unity, a lot easier to develop on, no technical restrictions like you have with the original Mega Drive, you could easily start putting together a Steam or Nintendo Switch build of the game. Once you've got those, you can actually start to generate some kind of revenue. Now, of course, they're going to have to move to a business model where you rely on the work of other people. So maybe it's a work for this game, get paid later model that they employ. Still feasible in today's market, and if they do that, they have a chance of bringing this game to the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. It's going to require some scoping of the product. You're probably not going to get everything that they promised. Drop the new hardware. Maybe keep the 80 meg because it sounds like that's less risky investment, but the audio, you don't really need it. If they can do this, put that Mega Drive and Genesis original vision on the back burner and bring it to those other consoles, I really think there is a chance that Paprium could see the light of day. This is all assuming that this isn't some kind of elaborate scam. Seeing games spark into life and then fizzle away is an all too common occurrence in the games industry. And I think truly that's what's happened to Paprium. They've made missteps, definitely. If you're not truthful with your community, if you don't keep them informed, it's going to burn you big time. If you keep on promising them that your game is going to come out and it never does, that's going to burn you. If you hold a launch party and demonstrate the game with only 2 characters on the screen, it constantly crashing, no sound, and just the worst presentation you've seen, then you're going to get burned. I love to see new games on the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis and any of my retro gaming consoles. Tanglewood here is a fantastic platformer, and like I said earlier, something you would have seen back in the day on all of the gaming magazine front covers. It's a real smash hit game for the console. And then Xenocrisis. This is my game of 2020, and it's on a Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. Stunning graphics, great gameplay. It's a well-focused, well-executed game on nearly every single platform that you can think of. I would love to see Paprium come out on their Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. All these brand new games in development for these old platforms just really enrich the community that we have here. If you've enjoyed today's episode, then there's still time to subscribe to the channel by clicking on my little pixel head below. We release new retro gaming videos every Monday, and you can get notified as soon as one comes out by clicking on the bell just below this video. And you can check out our huge back catalogue of retro gaming videos, 2 which you can find over here.